In this episode,
You're suggesting that I have a higher technological ability than I actually do.
You've got me wondering whether I should be interacting with it now, Mars, and I don't.
Well, this is going to sound rather patronising, but it's true nevertheless.
I've never heard of a low loft header. I wouldn't know one if it jumped out and hit me on the head.
I didn't believe a word they said.
It's quite instructive, and it's very nerdish.
hi and welcome to another episode of Homeowners Q&A. I'm your host Mars, and in this episode we're handing the mic to people who've actually lived it, real homeowners. We're asking them, what do you wish you'd known before installing a heat pump? Joining me to share their stories and lessons are Mike McMillan, Tom Parsons, Nick Joy, and Nigel Harvey. Welcome, guys. Before we get started, we'd like to thank Egg for sponsoring this episode. Egg is on a mission to crack clean energy because, let's face it, switching to solar, batteries, or EV charging shouldn't feel like solving a riddle. With 10 years of making the hard stuff feel easy, they design, install, and support homes and businesses across the UK, turning clean energy into a no-brainer. Their goal? A future where every ray of sunshine powers a simpler, smarter choice. So thank you, Egg, for helping us all switch to the sunny side stress-free. Let's crack clean energy together. Great. So, Mike, do you want to get the ball rolling for us today? What is the first thing that you wish you had known before installing a heat pump?
Well, this is going to sound rather patronising, but it's true nevertheless. I wish I'd known about Renewable Heating Hub earlier than I did, because I'd done most of my research by that time, and it was during the late research that I came across RHH. But it would have helped me so much and saved so much time earlier. I spent probably nearly a year researching for heat pumps, and before that, solar energy, batteries, and so on. So it would have given me a chance to compare notes with many other people and probably saved me a lot of effort.
It's actually a good point, and I appreciate the shout out to Renewable Heating Hub, because when we put our heat pump in 6 years ago, there was literally just no information out there whatsoever. So we literally went into it blind, and as a result, we've got a system that I always say is like 50-60% as good as it actually should have been. It should have been an awful lot better. So Tom, what is kind of the biggest thing that you wish you had known before you'd put your heat pump in?
Well, when I was looking at heat pumps, I was thinking, right, what's the cost benefit and what's the carbon benefit of it? And when I got my design done, it came out with a SCOP, a coefficient of performance of 4.06, which was just about okay for me. I thought, okay, that's good enough. But I assumed it would be like when you buy a car and you get a miles per gallon and it says it's an 80 miles per gallon car, but actually you drive around and you're at 45 or 50. I thought with a heat pump, it would be the same. So the design was at 4.06, but actually I'd be at 3 or 2.8. So I was kind of resigned to the fact that it would be far worse than I was promised. And yet actually now here I am 6 months down the line and it's actually a SCOP of nearly 5. So it's far more efficient than I was sort of promised in the design, and that obviously has more financial savings for me. If I'd known it could get to 5, I probably would have signed up and have one installed sooner.
You are in the minority, though, to be fair, because a lot of people do get a lot of promised systems, which often they'll promise them 4 and they get it in a 3.5. So how is it that you think that your installation went the way that it did in order for you to have actually got the SCOP that you currently got?
Yeah, a big part of it is how can you trust your installer, isn't it? How do you choose the right one that's actually going to deliver at least what they're committing to? And it's really hard because you can fake all sorts of reviews online and things like that. I think it's speaking to people that have already got the systems and getting a feel for it. So I was fortunate to know other people that had good energy installs and it was positive discussions around it. And then you can see the attention to detail they're putting into the install, and you can ask them questions. I'm not an expert in heating or plumbing or any of that. So being able to ask questions that are doing it and seeing the caliber of the answers and then how tidy and well put together it looks at the end, that gave me confidence. And then, of course, you can see the numbers post-install and see how well it's performing.
We've teamed up with Egg, one of the UK's leading home energy providers, to give one lucky homeowner the chance to win a 6-panel solar installation worth £6,281. Perfect for a typical 3-bedroom house, this system can help you slash energy bills and cut your carbon footprint. The winner can also choose to upgrade by adding more panels or a battery, with flexible payment options available. This is your chance to future-proof your home, reduce grid reliance, and embrace cleaner, greener living, completely free thanks to Egg and Renewable Heating Hub. To enter, simply visit Renewable Heating Hub, link in the description. Terms and conditions apply. Don't miss out. Get your entry in now and start your solar journey sunny side up. Good luck. How about you, Nigel? What was your biggest thing that you wish you'd known?
I guess I wish I'd done it earlier. We had ours put in about 4 years ago, and honestly, I would have happily done it significantly earlier. And it was about getting the confidence to go ahead. But in truth, the installation was straightforward. It was done in a day. It's now saving us money, particularly because we've got solar and a battery and an EV as well. And it all works together beautifully. And I wish I'd done it earlier. It's important to understand that actually the scare stories that are out there in the Telegraph and the Mail are plain arrant nonsense, and they are out there to try to damage action on renewables, damage action on the climate, and the reality is it works well.
How about you, Nick?
I was just thinking how much I agreed with that. The truth is that I have a fairly sort of technical background, and I believed a lot of that stuff. You can't get more than 1 kilowatt out from 1 kilowatt in. That was the one that was started about 6 years ago. They started telling people that, and then I did a little bit of research, found out that it was a bit better than that. But I can't say I was quoted a figure of 4. We were quoted a figure of 3+. We're getting 5.5 on heating. That's an annualized figure, and 3.8 on water, which I have to say boggles the mind. What would I wish I'd known? I think it's really as simple as the impossibility of how good it is. And that's not something I say lightly, because hyperbole it occurs around all forms of renewables on both sides of the fence. And I think hyperbole is scary, but we really are running on very little power here. And for a 17th century house, that's pretty unbelievable. I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was a very complicated process converting this house. I'd wish I'd known that the operation of it is so wonderfully simple. And I wish I'd known the change to the overall atmosphere of the house, which I think is probably the most noticeable thing for us, is that there are no cold spots. We have an even temperature throughout the house all the time, and it's very easy to exist here. I wish I'd had that told to me beforehand.
I think your case, and it's really great that you decided to come on today, because you've got the kind of house that everybody says is impossible to heat in the UK. So do you want to just tell us about your actual property and what it is that you actually did to get it to work as efficiently as it does?
Well, the first thing, I was looking off camera because the dresser that was in this house since 1685 is sitting there. And yes, we were told by a number of people that this wasn't feasible. I want to make clear that I didn't do this. My partner Nikki, who's a bit shyer than me, did all of this, redesigned the house, insulated it. It was bought fairly derelict. As you can see, all the beams still exist. These are all the original beams. So there's quite a lot of insulation work, basically a rebuild of some sections of the house, but none of it is modern construction. Not one bit of the house is modern construction. But the central thing that made the difference was the air source. And we looked at ground source because I was saying cynical things like, air source won't really work. We better use ground source. It's going to be so much better. And then we found out the price. And so I decided to research air source a little bit better. I won't deny that the people who fitted it were superb. I didn't believe a word they said as they were installing it. Darren will say that I was cynical about almost every single thing he did. I now think he's utterly wonderful, and how he put up with me, I have no idea. The other thing you're often told about is the noise. They say, oh, well, they make quite a lot of noise. They don't. So I don't know if that gives you a flavour, but we use radiators upstairs, which I told wouldn't work. They work perfectly well. We do have underfloor in this part because we had to remove some of the old flagstones here. And so we lifted the flagstones and put down underfloor heating. But basically, almost everything that we were told by the cynical side was just rubbish.
Mike, Nick mentioned noise there. Was that ever a consideration for you? Were you ever concerned that the heat pump might be noisy?
No, it wasn't, because I looked at the figures, and being from an audio profession, it made sense to me. In our area, we've got a high ambient noise level due to motorways, a link road, aircraft, and so on. We've covered 3 sides by main roads for a start. So the ambient noise level is well above that from the heat pump. And when I've had people come here under the visitor heat pump scheme, they've had to go out and stand about a metre from the pump to know that it's on. The ambient level is that. It's not that the pump isn't noisy at all. I mean, there is some sound from it, but it's not obtrusive at all.
Tom, a point that we often see from homeowners is they say that they had wished that somebody had warned them that poor commissioning can undo good design. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The design could be great if the install is subcontracted to people that aren't bought into the design and the specifications that design was made to them. Then absolutely it can fall apart. And touched earlier on the Telegraph and the horror stories they share. The stories they're sharing are going to be the ones where it's been a cowboy install job, and it's disappointing to see. But I think the vast majority, we do see design teams and then install teams and commissioning that are well aligned and do end up with a bunch of happy faces like we're seeing here now.
So Nigel, you seem to have had a really good install. Could you just tell us a little bit about your property? Again, we often tend to find is that people say, I wish that somebody had actually told me that I have to look at the heat loss calculation to make sure that the heat pump matches that. So how did you guys address that point?
Our house is a fairly modern 1970s sort of dormer bungalow. The install was fairly straightforward. We've not got any underfloor heating. We use the same pipes for the radiators. About half the radiators needed to be increased in size to cope with the lower flow temperature, and it completed fairly straightforwardly. It was there were not too many issues at all. Just jumping back to the point about noise, by the way, we were told it would be about 55 decibels, which is about the same as an electric toothbrush. It's installed just beside a dovecot on the side of our house. The cooing of the doves is noisier than the air source heat pump, okay? The only time it can get a little noisier is when it's about sort of 0 degrees outside and it's really cold, but then you're not hanging around outside there anyway. But I remember a Telegraph article saying that the noise of air source heat pumps was going to result in civil unrest. I mean, that's just bonkers, isn't it? Civil unrest from an electric toothbrush level of noise.
How noisy is your heat pump, Tom?
I haven't measured it, but it's so unnoisy as to be not worth my time even thinking about it. I've got 2 young daughters. We spend a lot of time out in the garden, and certainly in the summer period we're in now, it doesn't make any noise whatsoever. And in the winter, when it was installed, I went and sat next to it and listened to it, and you're like, okay, I can hear it if I put my head next to the big unit. It's so negligible as to not be a consideration, which is crazy, is because that's what you hear about a lot, isn't it? That noise and civil unrest and the like.
Are you thinking about getting a heat pump? Then don't get caught out by a bad installation. Bodge Buster is your essential guide to asking the right questions and spotting red flags before it's too late. Written from real homeowner experience, this book gives you the knowledge to avoid costly mistakes and make informed decisions. Get Bodge Buster today in print or for Kindle, link in the description. So Nick, in terms of your heat losses for your property, how did you guys go about getting those heat losses verified to make sure that they were actually accurate in relation to the actual heat pump size that was ultimately installed for you?
You're suggesting that I have a higher technological ability than I actually do. There comes a point in any, my background is in fish and lots of things to do with fish. There comes a point in research where you actually start to disappear. And I've always had a very strong view that if you listen to a lot of people, you'll probably get more than reading a lot. So I spoke to a lot of people who had installed heat pumps, both bad and good. And at that time got a lot worse. But since we couldn't have ground source because of the sheer cost of it. So I started listening to the people who said that it was good. Pretty well, all of them at that time started saying, installer, talk to the installer, and how much they commit. And I have to say that I may have said occasionally to my partner that I thought our installer was rather good at the gift of the gab. Perhaps I could have done a great deal more on heat insulation and the rest, but we didn't. We did what we felt was logical, which was in keeping with the house. Nikki spent a lot of time debating with the builder about how we kept the structure and the look and the feel of the house, so it still feels like a 17th century house. So how do we do all that and at the same time install enough insulation to make sure that we get a reasonable result? We did not expect what we got, because one of us was rather cynical.
Similar question, Nigel. How involved were you in making sure that the actual installer fitted the heat pump size that was going to be adequate for your house? Because you obviously got it bang on.
Not much at all, to be honest. I took them at their word. They said you need it's a 13.5 kilowatt unit. It's got 4 bedrooms. The house. Okay, fair enough. That's what we'll go for, and it does the job. Does the job fine.
From my perspective, the one thing that I wish we'd known is radiator sizing. We hadn't actually had a proper heat loss calculation done again 6 years ago. I wish I'd had access to Renewable Heating Hub, because I would have known that would have been the first thing to actually inquire about. So as a result, when the heat pump got put in, we had probably 5 or 6 rads that were completely undersized. And when we changed them, it made a huge, huge difference. So Tom, did you have to change any rads on your side when you guys put your heat pump in?
So my house is 9 years old outside of an Exeter, which has actually got a relatively decent climate for the UK. And when I bought it, read with a builder, and they said, oh, it's built to very good standards and well insulated, but you don't actually know whether they're telling you the truth or not and what those standards are, because I'm not an expert in building either. So it was good then when the team came in and did that heat loss calculation and then looked at the EPC and said, okay, actually, no, this is a B grade and that is good, and it does give you good opportunity to put a heat pump in at a reasonable cost. But I did have micro bore piping throughout the property, which I know is which can put off some designers, some installers. The designers looked at it and they've done similar jobs on similar houses with similar pipe work, and they said, no, we can make it work with micro bore. I was pretty back and forth at this point, saying, when you say you can make it work, does that mean it's going to be struggling, or am I going to be worse off than other people that have changed their pipe work? And really digging into that, because this is a 10, 15, 20-year investment. I don't want it to be the wrong one. He said, no, it's going to work with micro bore. So took the risk on that one, or accepted, what they were saying is the truth. I think we changed 3 radiators overall. And one of those was because we already had an undersized radiator in one of our bathrooms. So actually it made sense to upgrade it. And what was crazy to me about this is if I ever changed the boiler, you don't have to do any of these assessments. So they would never look whether radiators were oversized or undersized. But a heat pump actually gives you that. Every single room looks at what you need and then gives you that perfect heating within your home, which is a massive plus point.
Mike, I know you spend a lot of time looking at your radiators. Did you have to actually change any?
Yes, we changed 8 out of 10 of them, and we had a dual-fuel towel rail put in at the same time. And so the 2 that weren't changed were fairly new ones anyway, which we'd had replaced in the previous upgrade, so to speak. So all of the radiators are well within their capacity and not struggling to keep us warm. And I might add, because of our age and various health conditions, we like it a little warmer than many people do. We go for 22.5 degrees, but we're comfortable, we're cozy, and all the radiators do what's required in each room. I did spend some time doing the balancing, and I wrote a little article for RHH about doing so.
Nigel, same question to you. Did you guys have to change any rads?
Yes, about half of them. I think it was 7 were changed and 6 stayed the six stayed the same. But the effect is fine. The rooms can all get to temperature quite easily. One of the changes that we noticed actually is that with the old gas boiler, when you walk past a radiator, you were aware that the radiator was on. There was a blast of heat coming from it, and it was quite fierce. With an air source heat pump, you're not aware of that. It's just the house is warm. You don't have that, area which is very hot beside the radiator and other parts that are cooler. It's a much more consistent, uniform, gentle heat.
Are you new to heat pumps and feeling lost? Then From Zero to Heat Pump Hero helps you understand, operate, and optimize your system. No jargon, just simple practical advice from one homeowner to another. Take control of your heating and save energy. Get your copy now. Link in the description. Mike, apart from Renewable Heating Hub, what other things do you wish you'd actually known prior to proceeding with your heat pump?
Well, one of them is a very controversial point, and that is I knew nothing about low-loss headers and knew not that they would be fitting one. I didn't know about buffers, but I haven't fitted one of those, so it's just the low-loss header problem. But I've spent some considerable time balancing it as best I can so that under its nominal pump speed, I'm balanced. Water in, water out, same temperature, or within 0.3 of a degree. But if I'd known before that low-loss headers aren't really necessary if the system is designed well, I would have said, and I don't want a low loss header, thank you.
That's an excellent point. I mean, buffer tanks is a conversation that we have all the time. Nigel, are you open loop or are you buffered?
I haven't a clue. I just have a heat pump that works. Mike. I've never heard of a low loss header. I wouldn't know one if it jumped out and hit me on the head. So there may well be half a dozen lurking up there, or there may well be none. I don't know. It comes on, it works. Sorry, I'm obviously a bit of a naive numpty in that respect.
What about you, Tom? Do you know whether you've got one?
I think it's a really interesting point, Mars, in that when I got a heat pump installed, I a young family job. I haven't got the time to be a heating expert to make it run. So I was keen that it was plug and play. I set the temperature on my high vat, the same as I used to do with my boiler. And the house is warm. So, and that's exactly what it does. So I don't have to be that expert. So you can dive into it if you want to. But I've been really happy that I don't have to spend a lot of time working out how to best optimize my house.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, actually, in terms of getting a system that actually works is actually irrelevant on how it's actually plumbed. Unfortunately, when it is plumbed poorly, you will actually know. I know Darren quite well, Nick, so I'm pretty much assuming that you guys don't have a low loss header or a buffer tank or anything like that. Would you happen to know?
We drive 2 electric cars. I know the principle of an electric motor, so I know why they're efficient. Do I want to know any more? No, I'm not going to make a living from. I agree with Nigel 100%. I'm not going to make a living from installing heat pumps. Look, there's a wonderful story about my mum who was caught trying to put a VHS tape into a television. And when asked what she was doing, she said, I don't care. I don't care if you laugh at me. I simply don't want to know. Make it work. That's where I am. It works. It's brilliant.
So we're kind of the poster child for everything that could actually go wrong with your heat pump installation, because we've got all the things that we've discussed already. And the other one that I actually wish I'd known was about weather compensation, because we were left for 2 years just running on a fixed flow temperature. So we were running at 45 degrees, didn't matter what the temperature was outside. Our system just didn't scale up or down. Mike, were you aware of weather compensation before you put your system in?
Yes, I was. And I think there should be a law forbidding installers setting systems on constant temperature and walking away. It should be criminal.
Tom, are you running on weather comp?
Yeah, absolutely. And the team talked me through it. Again, wasn't aware of it beforehand. They talked me through it, and it made a lot of sense about why that was crucial. And yeah, it works exactly as you'd hope for.
Nigel?
Yes, it is set up that way. But to be honest, I don't go in and play with those settings sort of at all. The only settings I play with are, the temperature, the water heating when that comes on or off, and if we're away on holiday, that's it.
Were you aware of weather compensation, Nick?
Not until this moment, because I assumed that that's the way it worked. So I shall straight after this go and check. But I would assume it is from the way it runs. But no, I don't know.
Given your kind of performance and the fact that it's Darren, I'm pretty certain that weather comp is enabled. And I think for anybody that's watching this and actually wants to know whether weather comp is enabled or not, when it's mild outside, let's say 8, 9, 10 degrees, and you walk up to your radiators, you should barely be able to actually feel that they're actually on, because they should be running at like 30 degrees, 35 degrees. If it goes to like 0 or -1, those rads will feel a lot warmer to the touch. The other big talking point that people always go on about is the actual controller itself. How often do you interact with your controller, Nigel?
Not that often, but in truth, ours is a bit clunky. Okay, we've got a Mitsubishi EcoDan. The unit is great. The controller is not the most user friendly, and so I sometimes have to remind myself, of exactly how to engage with it when I do. Maybe once every month or two, something like that, I actually go to do something other than using the app to say we're going away on holiday and put it into sort of a holiday mode.
Are you the same, Tom? Because I know you said you kind of fit and forget. Do you interact at all?
You've got me wondering whether I should be interacting with it now, Mars, and I don't. It's in the airing cupboard with the cylinder. When Steve did the commission day, he talked me through what I could need to do, and none of it seemed like I would want to do any of that. So I'm going away this bank holiday weekend, so I'll set the heating on to sort of ice protection mode, which you probably don't need at this time of year, but that's it. That's all I'll do, and that's just using the Hive app on my phone as opposed to the in-home device in the airing cupboard.
And how do you monitor your scops, and what brand heat pump do you have?
So I've got a Midea heat pump, and I'm fortunate, given that I work for Good Energy, they've given me access to the online dashboard, so I get all of the fun numbers, as you're probably working out, most of which aren't aren't really relevant to me, but Scott, I do understand and was quite excited to see it, significantly outperforming what I'd expected.
Nick, you've got a Panasonic, you said. I'm guessing you don't interact with your controller at all.
No, there's a story behind that, which is probably worth repeating. Being very much in the sticks, it's very hard to get decent Wi-Fi here. And being that we're away a good bit, we need to have it on our phones, and it simply would not connect. So basically, for about 2 years, we've been operating with the controller in the house being the only means of controlling the system. So, of course, when we arrived here, every time we arrive, we go and check to see whether, so we do interact with that. In the last 2 weeks, Darren's managed to get the controller connecting to our phone. So I think we will interact with it more. Certainly, it's very user-friendly. It's very simple, the Panasonic. It shows you what you need to know, and it's relatively simple to find out your COPs as well. So it's a very, very good system.
How about you, Mike? How often do you dabble? And I think you've got a Daikin, if I'm not mistaken.
I have, and the Daikin heat pump is controlled by Homely these days. And as they explain it, it's like having a nerd sitting over the heat pump, controlling it and twiddling with it each time, making all the tweaks that are necessary. All I had to do is set up temperatures and times, which in our case is very easy, 24/7, 22.5 please. And the heat pump's controlled. It doesn't actually use weather compensation as such. That's switched off because they have their own version of it, monitoring the internal and external temperatures and making the necessary adjustments. Homely takes care of it all.
With Homely, you set because I actually don't know much about it. You just set the temperatures. You've got sensors around the house, and basically it's kind of a combination of load and weather compensation. Would that be a good way of describing it?
Yes, there's one node which is in our sitting room, and there's one temperature probe on the back of the Daikin heat pump, and it takes the information from both and makes necessary decisions. I've got access to the dashboard out of curiosity and satisfaction, looked at that occasionally, and can see how it's modulating the temperature and the flow rate and what it's consuming at any time. It's quite instructive, and it's very nerdish, but it's satisfying.
Tom, one of the biggest trends that we've done, and we've done an awful lot of episodes on this recently, is the integration of battery and PV with heat pumps. Have you considered, or have you put in batteries and or PV to actually work in conjunction with your heat pump?
I think I follow quite a similar journey to a lot of people when they're looking at what should they add to their house. So I started off with EVs because that's the first sort of low carbon tech in an EV charger. Then I had solar installed about a year ago. So last spring, a 7 kilowatt peak system, and then the heat pump about 6 months ago. So I'm doing it step by step, and I'd love to have done it all at once, but obviously there is a quite high cost of doing it all at once. So I'm having to do it step by step. Obviously the heat pump runs throughout the day when it needs to over winter. And so I really now want to add a battery onto that system because I've got an excellent night rate at the moment to charge my cars at just under 7 pence. And I'd love to be able to use that to charge a battery, which can then run the heat pump throughout the day, throughout the season, over the winter period. Then I think I'm close to being done with the house and decarbonisation. It gets me down to a pretty low operating carbon footprint.
Nigel, batteries, PV?
Absolutely. I mean, as with Tom, we've sort of we've done it in dribs and drabs over the last 4 or 5 years. And as regards going for a battery, my advice would be come up with the biggest one you can afford and then add some, because actually that battery will pay back dividends, both for the running the air source heat pump for a fair amount of the day during the winter, but also then being able to charge up taking advantage of your low rate overnight during other periods as well when you've got an EV, because your rate is clearly much lower overnight. So a battery really works well alongside an air source heat pump, definitely.
How big's your battery?
14.4 kilowatts hours.
And would you be considering to put another one in at some point?
It's modular, and actually there's an extra 2.5 kilowatt hours you can add for about £800, and you can almost do it yourself. So I'm toying with the idea of doing that, actually. Yes.
How about you, Nick? Is it just the heat pump for you guys at this point?
No, all done at the same time. Nicky, you've got solar panels, battery, EV charger, all installed pretty well at the same time. So it's an integrated system, which is probably one of the reasons it's so efficient. The one point I should make to all those people who live in lovely populated areas, this idea that you can get smart meters and get all the rates is rubbish. We cannot, in 3 properties in this country, not one of them can access the smart meters, and the smart meters don't work. They've all had them installed, and then all the companies involved have admitted that they cannot give us any of the cheap rates.
So how are you utilizing your battery then to try and maximize? Is it just purely driving the solar into the battery? That's it.
Purely solar.
How about you, Mike?
We don't have an EV, so I can't take advantage of the EV rates for night charging. Apart from the EV, we've done the rest. We have the SunAmp Thermino hot water system, and that can be heated from solar or grid, or both. And that's done via the My Energy Eddy. And so now it's heating on solar during the day, and that makes it the cheapest way. We've got 27 kilowatts capacity, 27 kilowatt hours of capacity with 2 power walls connected together. And we've got 8.1 kilowatt peak of panels, solar panels, but they're not ideally located in terms of orientation and freedom from shadow. But we do see peaks of about 7 kilowatts, but the average is probably 6.5 kilowatts. So during the day, the battery's charged and we're exporting.
But even though you don't have an EV tariff, you're still on a time of use tariff where you get cheap electricity at nighttime. Is that correct?
Oh yes, we're on Cozy. I did try out their intelligent flux for a few weeks, but it wasn't too good for me. I didn't feel so. I've gone back to Cozy. So about 14 pence a kilowatt hour. So something like twice the EV rate, but still much less than many of the standard tariffs would allow for. And I found that it's a very convenient system with Cozy, having 3 intervals during the day. It means I can top the battery up to full at any of those 3 periods and know that in the winter the heat pump is going to keep going, no problem. Our heavy use in the winter, if we've got -6, -8 degrees, we might be approaching 48 kilowatts of consumption. But normally our winter consumption is 20 to 30 kilowatt hours in a day. So it's well within the capabilities of 27 kilowatt hour battery charged at 3 intervals. So Cozy's the one for us.
The regular advice that we often see from installers and from homeowners, in fact, is for anybody that's considering a heat pump, it's for that homeowner to go and see a heat pump in operation in somebody else's house. Tom, did you guys ever go and visit a different heat pump or see one in action, or did you guys just pull the trigger without actually seeing one?
I did. I went to the National Self-Build and Renovation Centre at Swindon, where they've got one set up in a sort of dummy house they've got in the big warehouse. And that's really good, going to the NSBRC and seeing that work with the solar and getting a feel for the noise as well. I remember when I was there, someone else said, "Can you turn it on, please?" And the response was, it already is on. That gave me a lot of comfort in terms of what it looks like and what it sounds like. But for my wife, who was less involved in the process, obviously didn't want to drive to Swindon from Exeter, she didn't get to see one. And I really wish we had, actually, because even during the install process, she was asking questions. "Oh, I'm still not 100% sure this is right. I'm going to do it because, you've researched it, Tom, and I trust you." But she was still on the fence until, it was installed and she could see how it worked. But could have resolved all that just by going along and visiting someone that already had one.
Did you go and see one, Nigel?
No, we didn't. I just wanted to do it. It was really something I was absolutely keen to do, to get the carbon footprint of our life down. And so I was perhaps a bit overeager in some ways. But I did do a certain amount of research, but no, I didn't go and have a look at others. We've since invited other people into our house to have a look at it and to talk it through and run webinars and things like that. But no, I went into it fairly blind, I guess, in some ways.
How about you, Mike? Did you guys go and look at one?
No, we didn't. I took the leap of faith, but it was a fairly secure one because I was quite certain that it was going to work. Like Nigel, we wanted to go green. We wanted to go green some years ago. So it was a case of, let's go. The boiler was beginning to say, look, I'm not feeling too well at my age. It wasn't what they refer to as a pressure sale. I can't remember the exact words they use now, but it would have carried on a bit longer. But we thought, no, it's going to go. We want to improve the system. We want to go green. We've got the solar sorted. We've got the battery sorted. Let's go for the heat pump. So we did.
Same question to you, Nick.
I mean, we've been up in Orkney and been in houses with pretty awful setups. So I think probably it worked against the system more than for it. I certainly think that we have worked very hard on our carbon footprint. I'm not sure I'd describe it as that, but certainly at burning things, we've tried to drop down the list on that. Right the way through to robot lawnmowers and things like that. I think to some extent we were forced, it was a forced hand in that there weren't any other options except to go for an oil burner here. We weren't, Nikki particularly wasn't willing to do that. I think she's quite right.
One more thing is to say, move as soon as possible. The old carbon intensive gas boilers are driving the climate crisis. Let's move into electric. The government is now pushing as hard as possible to decarbonise the grid. And to do that, we all need to be heating our homes with electricity as well. So playing our part in taking advantage of that decarbonisation.
Final word to you, Tom. What is the one last thing that you wish you had known before you put your heat pump in?
You know what, Mars? It's a bit of an odd one, but it's saying it makes you more popular is probably a bit too far. But people want to talk to you about it. Much like when they saw me in my first EV 4 years ago, they want to ask you questions. Well, now they know I've got a heat pump. Everybody's got questions, and that's great because it shows most people are thinking about making this change. They just haven't quite pulled the trigger yet. So yeah, it's a great conversation starter. And I find that's really interesting.
If you've got any questions about heat pumps, then you need to join the Renewable Heating Hub forums. You can connect with other homeowners, share experiences, and get advice on heat pumps and renewables. Sign up today and be a part of the conversation. Link in the description. So that's it for another episode of Homeowners Q&A. A huge thank you to Mike, Tom, Nick, and Nigel for sharing their experiences. And a quick thank you to Egg for sponsoring this episode and supporting conversations that empower homeowners to make better decisions about their home energy. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Until next time, stay warm, stay green, stay tuned. Goodbye.